Hey guys, Evan here with The Professional Amateur, and today we're going to be talking about the Sony A6500 custom button setup for video. Let's get started. So last week I did a tutorial on the custom button setup for the A7 series cameras, and in a lot of ways the setup's going to be similar for 6500 for video. But it's the differences in these two setups that you're going to want to pay special attention to. So I'm going to go through that setup for video with your A6500, and at the end I'm going to go through a tip that I use to get full control of your camera's capabilities. Okay, let's get started. You're looking at the Sony A6500 with the small rig cage and the 24mm f1.8 Sony ZEISS lens. So let's get started with the top buttons here, the C1 and C2 buttons. So my C1 button is set up for my picture profile. Now for the A7 for photography, I said don't use picture profile. For video, I would highly suggest experimenting with picture profiles. So right now if I hit C1, it'll access picture profile, and then I can take a right button hit and then go over to the actual settings of the picture profile. So this is going to be picture profile 4, and I've also changed the color mode to cinema. This is what I shoot in predominantly, and I've had really good results with this so far. Moving to the C2 button is going to be white balance. So I have the white balance set to auto for default. However, I do change this white balance setting before every time I shoot. That way I get the shot that I'd like to get. I just have this access here quickly so I can get to it very quickly without having to dig through the menu. Now, moving on to the back of the camera, we have a C3 button down here, and we also have this whole display toggle switch here that we can change, as well as this toggle switch here, the AEL and the AF/MF toggle switch. So for C3, I have this as a record button because as you can see, this button here is tough to get to, especially with my larger hands. On my A7, I have the center button being the autofocus zone. However, on this camera, I have the center button being the center lock on autofocus. If I hit the left button here, this is going to be my focus area. My default is zone. That's what I use predominantly when I'm shooting video. Now moving up to the autofocus manual focus toggle switch here, the default is AF/MF hold, which means you actually have to hold the button down to toggle between autofocus and manual focus. A lot of times I'm shooting this camera on a gimbal, so that's obviously not possible. So I have to go to the menu settings and I have to change this switch when toggled into AF/MF mode. This button is going to be AF/MF toggle. So if I hit it once, if you see it down here in the bottom left, it says autofocus now. If I hit it once and let go, it's going to go to manual focus. That is until I re-toggle it, and then it'll go back to autofocus. If I have it on a gimbal and it's an autofocus, and then I take it off the gimbal and I want to quickly manual focus, I just hit it and then adjust my camera here accordingly. So in the previous tutorial, I told you that I shoot predominantly in aperture priority for my A7R II for photography. Since this camera is made specifically for video, I have set this up for video preferences, which is shutter priority. What that means is I set my shutter speed, and the aperture and ISO are going to be maintained automatically. In most cases I'm shooting outside, which means that I'm going to have a really low aperture or wide open aperture. I'm going to get a really nice depth of field. For any setting, you're going to want to abide by the 180-degree shutter rule, which means that at 120p I'm going to want to be shooting at 1/250, and then if I switch over to 4K, I'm going to be shooting at 1/60. As you can see here with my presets, I've got my picture profile set, my zone autofocus, continuous autofocus, and auto white balance that I can change up here, and also my picture profile. And in most cases I don't have to deviate from these settings, which means it's going to be perfect for running gun shooting, it's going to be great for vlogging, and it's also going to be really good for cinematic storytelling. The last thing I want to go over is a scenario that I run into quite a bit, which is going to be if I'm outside, I'm shooting shutter priority, I'm shooting at 120p and my shutter speed's 1/250, and my aperture is closed as far as it's going to go. So say I'm at f8 or something like that, and I'm trying to get a really nice, good shot. My ISO is all the way down, and I'm still blowing out all the highlights. There's one thing you can do, or the one thing that I do that really helps me out, is to add a neutral density filter to the front of my camera. This is a variable neutral density filter that I use from ProMaster, and it controls ND3 to ND64, which is 9 stops of dynamic range. And what that means is that I can do two things. I can close this up, which will allow me to properly expose the sky and then allow me to get dynamic range. But what it also does is it'll also stop down the aperture. That way I can properly expose and I can get the depth of field that I'm trying to get. This almost acts as an aperture ring that the higher end lenses already have built into it. It's a really effective tool. I use it 100% of the time when I'm out filming outside. Okay, professional amateurs, let's review. C1, picture profile. C2, it's going to be your white balance. Let's go to the back of the camera. C3 is going to be your record button. Your center button is going to be center lock on autofocus. Your left button is going to be your focus area. Up here, your AF/MF is going to be your autofocus, manual focus toggle, not hold, but toggle. What's good to note here is that for my movie settings, I have two. The first one's going to be at 120p. The second one's going to be at 30p. Number one's going to be at 1080. Number two is going to be at 4K. What's also worth noting is I shoot in shutter priority, which means that I have a constant shutter speed with a variable aperture and ISO. I shoot in zone priority with autofocus continuous set. And if you want to change your custom button settings, all you need to do is go to the first camera icon here, scroll over to the fourth menu, and you have your 1/2 memory. Hey guys, thanks for watching this tutorial. If you like content like this and you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description below. I'm happy to answer them. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.